Okay, I'm going to do the reversing video for somebody on YouTube who asked me to explain the reversing exercise. They are in the process of doing their bus training, and I think they failed their reversing the first time, and they said that they basically hadn't had enough reverse practice and it hadn't been explained to them properly. So I'm going to do my best to simplify it, and obviously I have some videos of people actually reversing the bus on the reversing bay, which I will link to this so you can see it in real life. But let's just look at the reversing exercise and try and demystify it. First of all, if you are taking a category D driving test, remember that it's not just for a bus, it's for a coach as well. So some modern coaches have rear wheel steering. It does make it a little bit easier when reversing, but it makes it harder when driving forwards because of the negative swing at the back. It can make it very difficult to get around corners without the back end swinging out too wide. Obviously this is easier than an articulated lorry test, a category C plus E, because obviously the bus is rigid. It doesn't hinge unless it's a bendy bus, and you wouldn't normally do a reversing exercise in a bendy bus because it's actually harder online and possible to reverse, even harder than an articulated lorry because of the way it hinges. So this is just for a category D bus or coach test. Okay, so the first thing to say is this is actually much easier than reversing in real life. If you have to reverse the bus in real life, if you're in a bus station, or if you are on diversion, or if you get lost, the likelihood is it could be raining, it could be dark, you would have other road users behind you, you may be on a narrow road with parked vehicles. So in any of those circumstances, always get somebody to see you back. Don't be afraid to ask somebody to stand at the back of the bus and guide you back, and if they do notice that you're getting too close to something, ask them to make as much noise as possible and shout stop. Because there have been times when people have been guiding people back in reverse and they've been waving at them frantically in the mirrors and the drivers haven't seen them and they've carried on and hit something. So do explain to the person who's seen you back that they need to shout stop really loud so that you can hear them above the engine. You may need more than one person if it's a very confined area. You may need someone to watch the front for you and someone to watch the back, but don't be afraid to ask people to help you to reverse if you're on the road and you're panicking and you've got to reverse the bus because you're in diversion or something. This is much easier. This is an off-road exercise. You're in a controlled environment. You're safe because there's no vehicles around you. And the worst thing you can do is hit a cone, and it's not going to cause any great damage if you hit a cone. In the real world, on the road, it's much, much worse. So in some ways, this exercise is a little bit too easy. When I did my test back in 1995, the reversing wasn't like this at all. It was an L shape. You had to reverse around a corner. It was pretty much the same thing. It wasn't any more difficult. In fact, this exercise is probably more difficult. But I think the actual reversing exercise should be a bit harder because it doesn't really prepare you for having to reverse the bus on the road. But anyhow, let's look at it. So when you start the reversing exercise, the bus will be parked here at cone B. Okay, and normally, certainly if you're doing your driving test at a delegated test centre, that's the point where the examiner would ask you the questions. You would go through all the license checks and all the various formalities that need to be done before you start the reverse and go on the road. If you go to the DVSA test centre, it's slightly different. They do the reversing exercise at a different time to the actual on-road test. But it doesn't really matter. Let's just look at this as an independent exercise. So the bus is parked at cone B, the engine's switched off. You'll normally have to start the engine and build up the air pressure. And the examiner will ask you to drive forwards between cones A and A1. So that's up to here. Okay, so you drive forwards. Okay, once you reach cones A and A1, you stop without going past them, So you stop at the 2 cones. It's better to try and position yourself a little bit to the left so you can create a little bit more space here between the bus and the yellow line. It gives you a little bit more room to manoeuvre. But when you stop, you must be able to see cone B, which is here, in that left-hand mirror. Yeah, because if you can't see it, it means that the bus is probably crooked and it's giving you an unfair advantage. So it means that you're not straight, so when you reverse it's easier. So you need to be able to stop straight and see cone B in that left mirror along there. Yeah, okay. Once you've done that and you've stopped, engage reverse gear and sound the horn. Some vehicles do have a reverse beeper, but it's always a good idea to make as much noise as possible when you're reversing. In the real world, the reason we ask you to sound the horn is if you're about to reverse and hit something and somebody hears the horn go and hears you reversing and they can see that maybe you haven't seen a parked vehicle behind you or something, they can run up and shout stop. Yeah. If somebody sees that you're about to hit something, hopefully they'll help you and they'll shout stop, but that's why we make as much noise as possible to alert people.